Hey folks, welcome to the 30 Days to Learn Adobe After Effects course. My name is Vincent Nguyen, and today in this really quick lesson, we're going to be discussing about rendering for final output. So you've created your animation, you've keyframed everything, you've applied effects, and you're pretty much ready and done to export your project to a shareable format so you can upload this video onto YouTube, Vimeo, or maybe even add it to your Premiere sequence and edit it further in there. But pretty much we're done with your animation here. I have a very basic animation where I just applied the Pixel Storm preset to a text layer. And pretend that this is just all I want to render out and I'm done, and this is my final animation here. So how do you render this thing out and export it for sharing? So the first thing you want to do is set your work area right here. As you see, I have these two big orange bars here, the time ruler up here. And you want to drag it to the time frame of your whole render. So for example, if I wanted to render this whole composition here and it's 10 seconds long, then I would set the time area for 10 seconds long right here. But I just want the animation to start from 0 and end around right here. So I'm going to drag my time area to that spot in time. And since I want the animation render to start at 0, 0, I can just drag this one to the beginning here. So that way, it's only going to render this part right here. So very similar to how you would do a RAM preview. If you RAM preview this right now, it's going to only RAM preview from the beginning to this point in time. And that's how renders work as well. So once you've set your work area right here, you're ready to export. And there are two ways to do it. You can either go to composition and hit add to render queue. And it's just going to add this composition into the render queue so you can render. And this is very similar to Adobe Media Encoder. Or you can go to your composition here and then go to composition make movie. It does the same thing. It adds it to the render queue. And of course you can, if you have multiple compositions, you can add multiple items into the render queue at once and then render them all at once. But in this case, I only have one composition that I want to render. So it's only going to add one composition to the render queue. And here you have some basic options to change the output for your render. First off, we have the render settings here. If you click on it, you have some basic information that you can change. For example, the quality of your animation. For this case, we want it to be high quality, so we're going to set the quality to best. Of course, the resolution to full here. So these are very similar to the previewing options in After Effects. But usually I just ignore this because most of the time these are pretty much set for you to ready to go. But of course, it's always nice to review all these things before you render. But the number one thing that I always change is the output module. Now by default, it's set to lossless. I'm going to click on it here. And I'm going to change these settings almost all the time when I render stuff out. And it just depends on what you're rendering it for. So right here in the format, you have tons and tons of format to choose from. Now 99% of the time, I'm always going to render in QuickTime just because it's a really friendly format. It supports all the major websites and stuff like that. And it's just really high quality. Now the format is set to QuickTime, but of course you can select whatever format you wish. And then I'm going to make sure that video output is checked, because if it's not checked, it's not going to render anything out. So I'm going to check video output. And if I have any audio, I'm going to check the audio output as well and set the format of the audio as well. So if you don't have this checked, you're not going to render any audio out. So make sure that you have this checked if you are rendering anything with audio. And of course you have the option to crop things out. I usually don't do this. And of course you can resize as well. But I'm going to stick to the video output for now. The channels, you have the option to render either the color channel over here, the RGB, or the actual transparency channel, the alpha channel, or you can render both. And this is great for transparency clips, maybe like lower thirds and such like that. But we'll get more into that later. But for now, most of the time RGB will do the trick. Depth set to millions of colors is fine. Color set to pre-multiplied or matted is fine. Now what I am going to change is the format option. And this is where your renders can take either hours or minutes, or your renders will be either 5 gigabytes or 5 megabytes. So it all just depends on the video codec you choose and the quality of your render here. So if you really want some really high quality renders, I would highly suggest animation here. Maybe you're uploading a Vimeo video, or maybe you need this thing to be as high as quality as possible and you're doing an animation. I highly recommend choosing the animation codec right here and set the quality to maybe about 95 or so. Now bear in mind that because this is a very high quality codec compression right here, and the quality is set to a pretty high value, the file for this render is going to be fairly high. Based from my experiences, maybe a 10-second clip or 10-second animation is going to be at least close to a gigabyte of size. So you may want to keep that in mind. Now, of course, you can always lower the quality, and that's going to sacrifice some quality for file size, so the file size won't be as large. But most of the time, file size isn't really a problem, and the animation codec is a great codec to use when you need the maximum quality. Now, if you're doing a lot of stuff for the web, I recommend H.264, a really nice, handy compression that you may be familiar with in Premiere. It does a really great job at compressing things with low file size while maintaining high quality, so H.264 is really great. And my favorite one is the photo JPEG, because you're kind of getting a JPEG quality. You know, JPEGs aren't the best image format, but you know, JPEGs are relatively decent, and you're pretty much rendering your video in a photo JPEG format, which is very low file size, but the quality stays relatively nice. And then I usually set the quality down to 91% here, and that usually gives me a really nice output for my final renders. And of course, you have advanced settings, again, which we'll be taking a look at a little bit later. They're a little bit more advanced for the web, such as the bit right here. But you know, if you're a web guy, you should know what all these things do. And then once you have all your stuff here set, we can go to the audio and make sure that your audio codec is set. I usually set mine to AAC and hit OK, and then hit OK. And once you have that done, you can go and select your output. Right here, if you click on it, you can set the output path for your final file here. And then once you're ready, you just hit the render button. And it's going to render your scene here. And of course, you have the ability to pause the render here, or stop, or continue. And it's going to render out a file for your animation or project here. And then once you have that file, you can either bring it to Premiere or upload it straightly. But that's pretty much how you render something within Adobe After Effects. Fairly simple. Now in the next lesson, we're going to be taking a look at the type tools, the text panels, and some basic tracking and animators for text within Adobe After Effects. So that's pretty much it, guys. I'll see you guys in the next lesson. Bye, guys.